There is a quiet leak in most people's financial lives, and the reason it is so dangerous is because it does not feel like a mistake at all. It does not break anything overnight, and it does not create panic. Instead, it blends into your routine so naturally that you almost never question it. It sits in your driveway, starts every morning without hesitation, and gives you a sense of progress every time you get behind the wheel. But at the same time, every single month, it quietly pulls money out of your future in a way that feels small in the moment but becomes significant over time. This is the car payment trap. And once you see it clearly, you will never look at a car the same way again. If you slow down and picture it, the moment usually feels very different. You might be sitting in your car at the end of a long day, with the engine off and the dashboard still glowing softly in front of you. In that moment, the car feels like something you earned. It feels like proof that you are moving forward and doing better than before. And to be fair, in many ways you are. However, what most people do not realize is that the same car that feels like progress in the moment can quietly become the reason they feel stuck a few years later. This does not happen because they made a bad decision, but because they made a very normal one. A few decades ago, the way people bought cars forced a completely different kind of thinking. You either saved up enough money to buy the car, or you chose something that you could afford to pay for right away. This approach was not perfect, but it required you to answer one very direct question, which was whether you could truly afford the purchase. Today, that question has been replaced by something much more subtle. Instead of asking how much the car costs, most people ask how much the monthly payment will be. That shift may seem small, but it completely changes how the decision is made. When you focus on the monthly payment, you stop thinking about the total cost and start thinking about what feels comfortable in the moment. As a result, a $25,000 car no longer feels like a large purchase because it is framed as a manageable monthly expense. In the same way, a $50,000 car does not feel expensive when it is presented as just another payment that fits into your budget. Over time, this way of thinking turns a major financial decision into something that feels routine, almost like a subscription. To really understand the impact, it helps to slow the numbers down and look at them clearly. If you have a $700 car payment, that adds up to $8,400 each year. Over 5 years, that becomes $42,000. On its own, that number is already significant, but it still does not tell the full story. The deeper cost comes from what that money could have become if it had been used differently. If that same amount were invested consistently over time, even at a modest return, it would begin to grow in the background. Instead of disappearing each month, it would compound and build on itself. This is where the real trade-off exists, because the cost is not just what you spend, but what you give up the chance to build. The reason this trade-off is often ignored is because the car still feels worth it in your daily life. You use it regularly, you enjoy the comfort, and it makes your routine easier. There is nothing obviously wrong with that, which is why the decision feels justified. However, beneath that surface-level comfort, something more important is happening. You are trading future flexibility for present convenience, and that trade does not feel painful right away. Instead, it feels invisible until enough time passes for the impact to become noticeable. This is where your thinking plays a major role in the decision. A car is not just a tool for getting from one place to another, because it carries emotional meaning. It often represents progress, stability, and a sense of accomplishment. When you arrive somewhere in a certain type of car, it quietly communicates something about you before you even say a word. Even if you do not consciously think about it, that feeling still influences your decisions. Human beings do not make financial choices based on logic alone, because emotions are always part of the process. In many cases, people are not just paying for transportation, but for the feeling of confidence, comfort, or status that comes with it. The car payment trap works because it ties a long-term financial commitment to a short-term emotional reward. The hidden downside is that every dollar committed to a car payment loses flexibility. Once that money is assigned, it cannot be redirected toward other opportunities. It cannot be invested, saved, or used to create something new. This lack of flexibility shows up in subtle ways. You notice it when an unexpected expense creates stress, or when you hesitate to pursue an opportunity because your budget already feels tight. You may even feel it when your income increases, but your financial situation does not improve in a meaningful way. This happens because your money is already committed before you can use it differently. There is a turning point that many people experience. It is the moment when they finally pay off their car. At first, nothing dramatic changes on the surface, but internally, there is a shift. There is a sense of relief and space that was not there before. For the first time in a while, a portion of your income is no longer tied to an obligation. This changes how you think. You stop focusing on what you owe and start thinking about what you can build. That is the identity shift. You move from managing payments to creating options. The challenge is that many people do not stay in that space for long. After paying off a car, it is common to feel like you deserve an upgrade. You may feel that you have earned something newer or better. Without realizing it, you step into another loan and restart the cycle. This decision feels reasonable, but it resets the progress you just made. Another 5 years of payments begins. The real issue is not the first car payment, but the habit of always having one. When you look at this pattern over time, the impact becomes clear. Many people spend decades continuously making car payments. There is always another upgrade, another loan, and another commitment. Individually, each decision feels manageable, but together they create a cycle that limits financial growth. There is another way to approach this that does not require extreme sacrifice. It simply requires a shift in perspective. Instead of focusing on what looks impressive, you begin to prioritize what keeps your life flexible. You might choose a reliable car instead of the newest one, or keep your current car longer than expected. At first, these choices may not feel exciting, but over time, they start to produce real results. Your money begins to stay with you instead of leaving every month. That creates momentum. Wealth is not built through dramatic changes. It is built through consistent decisions over time. It grows in the space between what you earn and what you commit. Since car payments are often one of the largest recurring expenses, reducing or eliminating them creates room for growth. There is also a deeper way to think about the cost. Every payment represents time and energy. It reflects hours that you worked and effort that you gave. When you see it that way, the decision becomes more personal. It is no longer just about whether you can afford the payment, but whether the trade is worth it. For many people, that realization is uncomfortable, but it is also what creates the opportunity for change. The goal is not to avoid owning a car or to remove comfort from your life. It is to understand the role a car should play. A car is a tool that supports your daily routine, but it should not control your financial future. When you see it that way, your decisions become more intentional. You begin to value flexibility over appearance and long-term options over short-term upgrades. These shifts may seem small, but they compound over time. As they do, your financial situation becomes more stable, and you gain a greater sense of control. If you currently have a car payment, this is not about guilt. It is about awareness. Because awareness creates choice. One simple question can change everything. If that payment disappeared tomorrow, what would change? Not just in your finances, but in your stress, your decisions, and your future. For many people, the answer reveals just how much influence that one expense has. At the end of the day, financial progress is not just about earning more. It is about keeping more of what you earn and using it intentionally. Sometimes the biggest improvement comes from removing the commitments that hold you back. The next time you consider upgrading your car, pause. Not to deny yourself, but to understand the trade. Because wealth is not built on what you can afford monthly. It is built on what you choose not to commit to long-term. And sometimes the most powerful financial decision you can make is one that no one notices. Driving a car that does not impress anyone, but quietly gives you something far more valuable. Control, freedom, and the ability to move forward without something constantly pulling you back.